Warning, this video will contain spoilers for House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon's third season had a lot to live up to. Season 2's now infamous finale set us up for all-out war and made a promise that the houses of Westeros would soon be colliding in epic fashion, and Season 3 was tasked with making good on that promise. As if that pressure wasn't enough, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms upped the ante earlier this year. The 6-episode introductory season was more beloved than anything Game of Thrones since Obama was president, and pretty much ate House of the Dragon's lunch by the end of episode 4. It was like seeing a younger sibling having a growth spurt over an older one. Suddenly, the young buck is everyone's fascination, and the older one, they're alright, but did you see the Trial of the Seven? Come on. It's not like House of the Dragon's architects could change their plans either. Filming wrapped in October of last year. They couldn't change course all of a sudden after witnessing the triumph that was A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. The show was the show, and now they had to deliver these 8 episodes to a public who just saw how good they could have it, who were going to judge this product against a standard the showrunners didn't even know existed until February of this year. The good news is, House of the Dragon didn't embarrass itself. Far from it. It frequently shined in a season that its showrunners clearly had a lot of pride for, and which addressed some of the biggest complaints that populated the internet about the show in 2024. House of the Dragon had a season that rightfully earned back a lot of goodwill, even if the flaws of this Fire and Blood adaptation are more apparent than ever. In Season 3, Rhaenyra and Team Black have retaken King's Landing. The Hightower forces and the dragons that back them are scattered across the continent. They stubbornly resist Rhaenyra and bide their time, while hoping for an implosion of sorts from her side. The crown is without gold, thanks to Tywin Lannister, and is seeing members of the City Watch being meticulously picked off in the streets by an unknown force. The gamble, made by Season 3's primary antagonist, Ormond Hightower, is that such unrest will cause Rhaenyra's downfall and allow Daeron Targaryen to assume the Iron Throne. I continue to be amazed by the boldness of George R.R. Martin's plotting. In any other fantasy story, Rhaenyra wouldn't even be sniffing the Iron Throne until the very end. In this, she's assumed power just after the midway point of the story. It's always a pleasure to see how acrobatic his plots are. The character you thought was down for the count, they're back. The other one you thought was going to be integral for the season, sidelined. The story may not be as resonant as you want it to be, but no plot matches the unpredictability of a Martin one. I felt that was especially true for the deaths this year, which were just the most brutal of gut punches. You knew Jace and Kristen Cole were going to meet their respective ends in those battles, but the way each died was classic Thrones cruelty. So unfeeling to the characters, but couldn't be more appropriate for each. Cole especially, him being dead set on dying heroically in battle just to be unceremoniously disposed of by a few quick arrows, is exactly the type of harsh poetry Martin loves to write, and its depiction is one of the highlights of the show for me. Every evaluation of a Game of Thrones property inevitably kind of turns into a Martin glaze fest that puts down the people adapting it. But I don't want to do that because there are really talented people working on this that have elevated this season without fanfare just like they have in seasons past, namely Claire Kilner and Sarah Hess. Kilner and Hess are not responsible for your favorite episodes of House of the Dragon. They're responsible for making the ones that are set up to be trash into bangers. They're the director-writer team on the Green Council, which is the episode after Viserys has his epic entrance into the throne room, Rhaenyra the Cruel, the episode after Aegon's son is murdered, and both Queen's Landing and Rhaenyra Triumphant, which follow the Battle of the Gullet. I look at these episodes, and the shared feature among them is that they don't live or die by the dragons that appear in them, or by the magnitude of their endings, even though they do have some pretty great endings in them. They're episodes where you can actually remember interesting things happening before the last 10 minutes. They are actor forward and allow the best aspect of House of the Dragon, its tremendous cast, the time to be creative with the expression of their characters with dialogue that's not merely written to set up something a few scenes or a few episodes later. The decision to include Rhaenyra in every scene post-credits in Rhaenyra Triumphant was a particularly inspired choice and has no real source material to work off of. This is Hess and Kilner originating what they think Rhaenyra should act like in the immediate days after her victory, and the success of this episode makes you wonder how the show could be better if it was not in this race to hit so many plot points and deal with so many characters in just 8 episodes. House of the Dragon should have 10-episode seasons, and it lacking extra runway hurts the show's quality in really tangible ways. I'm not excusing the show. I'm not saying all of its failures are down to time and money, but I don't see how you could see the happenings of the episodes unfold and turn a blind eye to how 2 less hours are damaging the show's feel. One particular comment that I read which really stuck with me is that Daemon discovering the City Watch feels like a story beat that should have happened in episode 3 of a 10-episode season and instead happens in episode 5 of an 8-episode one. And that one Reddit rant is probably the most insightful thing I've read about the show this year. The show is out of order. Yes, the image of Daemon seeing the bloodied City Watch is striking, but there's no mystery behind it. It's Ormond. He's the clear antagonist at this point, so why is the show engaging in this pointless exercise of asking, who could possibly be behind these attacks? Yeah, maybe the main villain of the season. Having that sort of mystery present is what can inject otherwise dull episodes with energy and intrigue, but because we're only working with 8 of them, Ormond has to be revealed as a player in the war by the end of episode 3. Daemon doesn't have time to look around King's Landing in episode 4 because he has to touch base with Rhaena, so the City Watch murders becomes a wasted storyline. Imagine how much better it would have been if we were truly under the impression that all foes to Rhaenyra had submitted, and still these murders were happening. There would be the wonder, who is behind this? Is it a new threat? But the show's so out of order that it ruins a cool premise before it is even presented to us. Each plot thread in House of the Dragon crashes into the next. Maybe the storytelling style could have been capitalized on if the editing and score captured a sense of breathlessness, if they suggested even the slightest ounce of urgency. But those 2 parts of the show are total lame ducks starting in episode 4. So we have this bizarre discrepancy where the development of beats in the war feels like they're playing out at 1.5x speed, but the physical scenes themselves feel like they take an eternity to play out. It's another reason why I think Rhaenyra Triumphant has a case for the best episode of the season. Yes, we get all this information about the issues plaguing King's Landing, but the audiovisual rhythm of the episode is more akin to an episode of 24 or The Bear than anything else. It puts the viewer in Rhaenyra's frame of mind and gives a sense of stress that she would be experiencing as well. The rest of the season is cut together like the characters are just moving chess pieces on the board, like we're back in season 1 of Thrones. Well, Toto, we're not in Robert Baratheon's Westeros anymore. Team Black is on the precipice of absolute victory, Vaegar's on the loose, and Team Green is on the brink of total annihilation. Why are these scenes playing out at Downton Abbey pace? The unfortunate answer is that this creative team is terrified of formal experimentation. They are afraid of giving the show a visual personality that may be rejected, and that same fear made Daemon's dreams boring as sin 2 years ago in Harrenhal. Speaking of which, I can't fucking believe I'm talking about Harrenhal again. I, like many others, had some negative things to say about Daemon's time at Harrenhal, but for as tedious as the witch plot was, I did ultimately find it to be a success because of the involvement of the Rivermen. Oscar Tully's humbling of Daemon and the power shift there was interesting to see unfold, so what better way to bring Harrenhal back than to take out all the things that made it tolerable last time around? This is a character assassination, and not because it's an aura stripping for Aemon. It's because it leaves him with nothing to do except limp, look scared, stab people, and lust for his mother. What did we learn about Aemon at Harrenhal that we didn't know beforehand? What character arc have we witnessed? We got nothing. Zip, zilch, nada. Nothing but more of Alice Rivers, everyone's favorite. For as many good things as I have to say about the cast, I think Gail Rankin blows. Granted, it's not like she's given that much to do except appear when someone enters the castle and look kind of spooky over and over again. There's not that much going on. It's not like she's Lady Macbeth here. But my thing is, we just saw what Samantha Morton could do with barely any screen time at all as a witch in the Odyssey. We all saw Melisandre in Thrones. Her early material was really just her extolling the virtues of the Lord of Light, and she was still captivating. Why give Gail Rankin a pass? When you're playing a character like this, you almost have to have a crazy twinkle in your eye. You got to be committed to appearing a bit loonier than everyone else because these characters are at their core fanatical. They're zealots for the thing that brings them power, and we do get a sense of that zeal when Alice shows Aemon the dragon eggs, but in every other scene of this season, she is far and away the most wooden actor on the show. I'm curious, when they yell cut and she takes her hands off her hips from that pose she likes to lean back on so often, does she think she's done good work? Does she think yet another tempered line delivery is putting a unique spin on a witch archetype, or does she also know her performance is as painfully monotonous as the audience finds it? I wish I knew. Go east of Harrenhal and we catch up with Aemon's brother Aegon. I went on record saying Aegon and by extension Tom Glencairn was the best part of Season 2, so of course Season 3 barely wants to pay any attention to him. The Aegon story is the perfect complement to the rest of the season. Everywhere else you have lavish castles and intense scheming, and then you got Larys and Aegon, two chill guys trying not to get savagely maimed wherever they go. I got a huge kick out of seeing their shenanigans week in and week out. Their storyline is a necessary deviation from everything else we get over the course of a usual week's episode in both stakes and tone. From the moment Aegon kills one of his captors in episode 2 while screaming bloody murder, it's apparent both the showrunners and Glencairn understand that Aegon's life is meant to play out as a farce for a bit. He's been cast down from the highest position one could occupy right to the bottom. There's comedy in a terrible king being forced to live as a disfigured refugee in his country, and comedy the show successfully capitalizes on by putting Aegon through a weekly humiliation ritual. My only wish is that it lasted a little longer. Again, the rush that House of the Dragon is in really hurts itself. Sunfire's return and Aegon's moment of bravery in episode 7 is a euphoric moment, but a bit dampened because of the reduced time we spend with Aegon at his absolute rock bottom. More time showing Aegon suffering the lowest of indignities would have made his late stage comeback even more grand. Go south and we catch up with their sister Helena, who maybe didn't have the greatest of seasons. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some Helena stan, and I'm absolutely heartbroken her characterization isn't all there this year. She's never been among the best of this cast, but I never didn't like seeing her on screen either. Especially with that exchange she had with Aemon at the end of season 2, she showed some real backbone there. That was a moment for Helena, not her being a plot device for everyone surrounding her. She's now, unfortunately, a plot device for everyone surrounding her. It's as if the writers became too cognizant of the YouTube discussions surrounding the fact that she's a dreamer, because now every scene she's involved in, whether it's the camera calling attention to something, or her speaking cryptically, or the quick cutaway from the quilt in episode 7, every scene feels like a Where's Waldo game with her. Are you guys going to be able to find the prophecy in this scene? I don't know. It's a fucking exhausting exercise. I wish they would have let her be a character instead of fodder for internet theories. And then we get to Alicent, who is just an unequivocal disaster. 4 years ago, I was as bold to say that Alicent was a borderline lock for one of the best TV villains of the decade, in a take that is aged like pure milk. Now, I gotta cut myself some slack. There is no possible way the 2022 version of me could have predicted the Scooby-Doo-esque nonsense she would be up to this summer. It was not on anyone's bingo card that a show about the Targaryen dynasty was going to initially orbit around Rhaenyra and her childhood friend, and yet the spotlight put on Alicent and Rhaenyra's dynamic was the lifeblood of the show in its best season. The subtext of season 2 was all about these two women, each in positions of power, trying to reckon with the war they fed into, and contemplate undoing the actions that have led to this deadly moment. Rhaenyra's ridiculous visit to King's Landing last season notwithstanding, the choice to anchor the fight for the Iron Throne with a tale about female friendship reaped copious benefits for the show in its first 2 seasons. Those benefits don't continue this year. The problem is, once Alicent yields the Iron Throne to Rhaenyra, her story's complete. She serves no purpose to the other characters, there's no arc to extend. She made a choice to rid herself of the guilt she felt over sending the realm to its doom, and that's that. I can maybe buy one Rhaenyra exchange with Alicent. I can buy her bringing Alicent in to see Daeron, but these other times where Rhaenyra consults with her are so unbelievably strained. And now I gotta cut the critic voice for this one because it's just so ridiculous. In the episode Tumbleton, for instance, Rhaenyra goes to Alicent to ask what she knows about Ormond. It feels like Rhaenyra should be incensed and embarrassed right now after the Daeron deception, but okay, she's just calmly talking to Alicent, and then out of nowhere, she asks unprompted, "Did it pain you to have to send your child away?" Huh? What? A mother having to send their child away. Yeah, I don't think I'd have to ask any mother if it would pain them. That seems like a pretty obvious yes. I especially wouldn't think Rhaenyra would have to ask, considering she was there in King's Landing when Alicent gave birth to Daeron, and gave him away in the first place. She asks as if she doesn't have a clue, even though she has every reason to know. It's my least favorite moment in all 8 episodes, because it's the most clear instance of the writers grasping for straws to get more out of a certain character. For as good as Olivia Cook and Fia Sabin are, it would have been a greater dignity to sideline these characters when the story demanded it, instead of shoehorning them in because they were mainstays previously. The dual narrative that should get all the attention is the one sewn into the very fabric of the show's opening. The competing claims and journeys of Rhaenyra and Aegon are what the show's about now. The refusal to accept that, and clinging on to the workings of seasons past, sullied the subplots of Alicent and Helena, and capped the quality of the Aegon one way lower than where it should have been. While we're in King's Landing, we might as well discuss the queen herself, Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra had a mixed bag of a season 2. Emma Darcy's unquestionable acting talent was on full display, but Rhaenyra was marooned on Dragonstone with the B team of characters. It was just kind of hard to thump your chest about how great the character was when the majority of her talks with others post-episode 2 felt pointless. Season 3 thankfully provides material at the very least worthy of Darcy's time and effort. The first 2 episodes feature the most challenging and dramatic acting moments for the character, and Darcy must have been chomping at the bit to do scenes like this. This is an actor going for broke. The episode 1 outburst and episode 2 breakdown are the big, completely sincere acting moments you just don't get on TV that often, and it's impressive to see her this intense without ever betraying the truth of the scene she's in. I didn't think of it while I was watching her mourn Jace, but as I was writing, I was thinking about Jessie Buckley's performance in Hamnet, which was seen as so challenging and great that it won an Oscar. And I liked her in Hamnet, I really did, but if I had to choose what moment was more emotionally moving for me, it was Rhaenyra coming across Jace. It's not just her weeping while at his side, it's the transition out of her denial at the very beginning, her still trying to command the room and castigate those present, only to break down crying again when seeing Missaria. There's so much going on here beyond the pure anguish behind losing Jace, and I can't tell you how many times I've opened HBO on my laptop to hear her delivery of "Have you not betrayed your queen one more time?" It's a one-of-a-kind delivery for a one-of-a-kind performance. Millie Alcock may be destined to be the brighter star of the two in their lifetimes. She may have more successfully used the show as a launch pad for the rest of her career, but there's no doubt Emma Darcy is giving the more committed, better performance that each and every episode makes a case for being one of the best across all of Game of Thrones. For as quickly as Rhaenyra won hearts and minds over in the first two episodes, it took about the same amount of time for show watchers to completely sour on her. Unlike with Aemon, there is some actual reason and skill behind Rhaenyra losing who she once was. It's clear from Alicent's speech about the Iron Throne changing a person that a goal this year was to show Rhaenyra morphing into something she previously wasn't. Season 3 sees tasks thrown her way, massive and minute, personal and bureaucratic, and she fails in almost all of them. She overrules Daemon about killing Ormond's forces, she alienates her hand, she doesn't do enough to appease the Dragon Riders that gave her the upper hand in the conflict in the first place. She seems more bothered by the small folk than Aegon did. Just like how a lesser show would have kept Rhaenyra off the throne until its very end, a lesser show would have seen her magically undo any ill that has fallen upon Westeros. The more House of the Dragon progresses, the less it feels like it's making a case for Rhaenyra, and the more it feels like it's making a case against the Targaryen dynasty, and the woefully unprepared individuals who are entitled to supreme power without having done anything to prove they're worthy of it. The show manages to bring down Rhaenyra without making her out to be a total dunce either. Her display of generosity outside the Great Sept of Baelor is a savvy political move, as is her assassination attempt on Daeron in Episode 6. She scapegoats Torrhen Manderly for the city's financial woes, and deceives the upper class of the city to equip the crown with coin after Tywin Lannister moved the rest. It's only in the finale when Rhaenyra loses all her senses and becomes a fully mad queen. Before then, she does show some promise as a leader, albeit one that foolishly prioritizes living up to the idea she has of Viserys in her head over common sense. She has such little confidence in herself to live up to that ideal that her foreplay with Missaria is centered around being acknowledged as worthy. The approval that she yearns for is so sparse in the real world she can only find it in sexual fantasy. Looking at all of these scenes together, it's not like Rhaenyra is going to win America's favorite character or anything. She's not hyper-competent. She's not self-assured. She lacks the qualities that makes other Martin characters beloved. But it's that same lacking that has made her characterization and evolution so fascinating. Daemon kind of had all those qualities given to him from his first episode, which is why I initially wasn't as high on him as others were. Over time, I think the creators have successfully added wrinkles to his character, and there's not a single character here who has benefited more from the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy being introduced than he has. Daemon hasn't given up his ambition for power, he's just reshaped it. He's fine with being second in command, because when his desire was to be first, his reach wouldn't have extended beyond Westeros. With Rhaenyra, he sees dominance without borders. He thinks everything is there for the taking, because some greater force is orchestrating their inevitable victory. All they have to do is play their role dutifully, and nothing is off limits. One of my favorite moments of the season is when Gwaine comes to negotiate and Rhaenyra's gender is again raised as an issue with respect to her rule. I was suspecting that Daemon would again tease a turn and contemplate a power grab for himself, and instead he goes full Darth Vader mode on Gwaine and chokes the shit out of him while reaffirming Rhaenyra's station. He is both an obedient servant to Rhaenyra and the most persuasive influence on her by the end of the season, evidenced by her line to Alan in the Great Sept of Baelor, echoing what Daemon told her earlier in the episode. Their dynamic is only enhanced by Darcy and Smith's unreal chemistry with one another. Even when Season 3 was flailing, putting these two together always made for gold. Like with Maisie Williams and Charles Dance, and Conleth Hill and Aidan Gillen, sometimes you get actors that bounce off each other so well that even run-of-the-mill scenes end up being captivating with them in it, and Darcy and Smith are one of those rare duos. Then we finally arrive at the bit players, which are hit and miss. Better than how they were handled in Season 2? Absolutely. They're still not as good as you'd want them to be. The Dragon Riders don't work at all. bland motivations, and the least exciting actors of the cast. It was Season 2's responsibility to make them worthwhile, and that season's failure in this department will be felt for the rest of the series. I hope to see as little of them as possible in Season 4. Reyna and Baylor were likewise botched from the moment they were introduced. Season 1 capping their screen time may have prevented that 10-episode run from feeling stretched thin over too many characters, but the bill is coming due now that they're Dragon Riders. It's a bore seeing them on screen. Corliss and Alan get upgrades this year. They're more compelling than last time around, even if they're far from the show's top tier of characters. Cole had a great end to his character, but like Helena and Alicent, had his worst season. Season 3 desperately needed a despicable antagonist to root against while Ormond was still being built up, and Cole would have been the ideal character that we could channel our hatred towards. His nihilistic turn could have worked, but he comes off more as a college student who's read one book from Albert Camus and wants to remind everyone he encounters that he believes the world is evil and that you should definitely ask him what he thinks about it. It's not Fabian Frankel's best work, and the show should have made Cole the biggest thorn in Rhaenyra's side before Ormond's plans take form. Getting the Ormond, Daeron, and Gwaine stuff right was essential to the success of the season, and they did. The Battle of Tumbleton wouldn't have worked if Ormond wasn't as smug and loathsome as James Norton made him out to be. The momentum the show enjoys going into its fourth and final season was set into motion by the audience's desire to see this villain and his forces meet defeat. It's damn impressive how many villains from the original series he's leapfrogged in just one season and was brilliantly realized by Norton himself, who I would love to see more of in other projects. When House of the Dragon isn't working, it's really not working. Aside from just being boring, it can also just feel like you're not in the hands of capable TV makers, and the lows of the show keeps that sentiment that they're outright butchering another Martin tale alive. But when you really look at it with perspective, okay, episodes 4 and 5 don't work. Episode 1 was great spectacle that managed to not disappoint even after years of anticipation. Episode 2 was even better and brought about the most consequential shift in power in the series up to that point. Season 3 was a gimmick episode at its very best and made way for the show's best character and performance to shine. Episode 6 is a classic B+, A- Thrones episode that methodically places moments of interest over the course of an hour. Episode 7 is damn good and has an unforgettable moment to conclude with. And Episode 8 somehow one-ups the opening naval battle with an even better land battle that's complemented by scenes without a single false note. Okay, well, the Alice Rivers monologue doesn't quite do it, but she just fucking blows. Everything else sings. I did hyperbolically say to my friends after the Season 3 finale that it was better than the entirety of Night of the Seven Kingdoms. The actual statement itself, I don't believe at all. If I had to rank my favorite shows of the year, Night of the Seven Kingdoms would be higher. It's a better, more tightly constructed show that doesn't even allow itself to have all the subplots that weighs House of the Dragon down. What I do believe in is the spirit of the statement. For all that Night of the Seven Kingdoms does well, it is Game of Thrones done small, which is practically an oxymoron to me. I want Game of Thrones to feel massive, for the production design to be ornate, for there to be all these vying ambitions, because it's nowhere else. Even with The Odyssey this year, which has one of the most iconic sieges in the history of mankind, we barely even see the siege. We see the sneaky prelude to the siege. It's up to House of the Dragon to deliver the big old-school battle against a movie that costs $90 million more than it. All of this is to say, with all the media out there, no one picked up the torch from Game of Thrones for awe-inspiring high fantasy. Hell, besides The Diplomat, there's not much notable political dramas out there either. House of the Dragon, in continuing the mission of Thrones, is filling a niche that no other property is even close to filling. That's why I find the project of this show immensely valuable, because besides the dismal Rings of Power, which is already half in the grave, no other show is even trying to offer a fantasy world at this scale. Nowhere else do you get these shifting alliances that shuffle around the power hierarchy of the ensemble, and can send both characters you love and hate to an early grave. Night of the Seven Kingdoms is doing Thrones its own way, cutting back on grandeur, and rivals all trying to thwart each other for dominion. But it's those exact elements that makes Westeros transfixing, and makes you so intensely wish for some character's success over others. House of the Dragon is a mistake-riddled show that hopefully cuts back on its lesser elements in its closing bow, but still enjoys highs, prolonged highs, that trump even what the best shows of a given year can offer. I am giving House of the Dragon Season 3 an 8.25 out of 10, and I thank you for watching.